Hi, shalom, chaverim. We're hearing a lot today about conserving our resources. And then essentially, the reason why we have to conserve our resources is because they're not unlimited. So we have to think about the future and even the present. Do we have enough fuel? Do we have enough food? Certainly, do we have enough water? And depending on which prophet of doom you listen to, they say we're certainly running out of something, whether it be land. They all agree that we have to do something to conserve. And that's the whole mantra of reduce and recycle and rethink and reuse and so on and so forth. Well, there might be a lot of truth to this, and that got me thinking, is there a similar crisis concerning man? Is there actually a debit on intelligence? Would anyone suggest that being that man is civilized for X amount of years, and there's X amount of intelligence, IQ, creativity that has already been offered to this world, having another child might minimize the potential for thinking? How about another 100 million people on earth? Would that minimize our capacity to love? Perhaps love is limited as well. I mean, after all, if there's only a certain amount of water and a certain amount of land and a certain amount of landfill, is it true that there's also a certain amount and a limit to the human spirit? I think most people would laugh at such a suggestion. And they would say, on the contrary, look, we have more creativity today than ever before. We have more progress, more civilization, more culture, more everything. All a testimony to the human spirit. Okay, well, if that's the case, in human emotions, it should be the same. There should be more love today than ever before. Perhaps there is. But then you meet people that are looking for love, that are starved for love. They need affection. They walk around with that sad litany. I have so much love in my heart, but I don't know what to do with it. I have no one to share it with. And my question is, if the human spirit and the noble part of the human spirit has not gotten any less, on the contrary, from year to year, from week to week, from day to day, and perhaps hour to hour, the nobility of man can be expressed, why is it so difficult to find ourselves sharing these wonderful resources that we have in abundance? In fact, we could simply give one of the many definitions that the difference between the spirit and the physical, or what's loosely called spirituality, in contrast to the material, is the material is limited, it is confined. The spiritual is unlimited, it's unrestricted. The material decays. The spiritual gets enhanced. Okay. While more the physical takes place, the spiritual does not take any space. So we'll say that intelligence, decency, I used the word before, love, affection, fear, concern, compassion, regret, despair, none of these have gotten any less over the period of what is commonly called mankind, because they're spiritual qualities. Okay, we have all of these things. What would you say to a person who has good health, a wonderful home, enough food, provided with recreation, a hefty bank account, and he's anxious? You say he's not well. What are you anxious about? What are you missing? You have everything that you need. Well, if it's true in the material and any one of those material things could be taken away, why is it so difficult when it comes to the spiritual? So we say to a person, you have intelligence, you have decency, you have love, you are loved, and the person is anxious and feels unworthy and essentially feels unfulfilled. That's unhealthy. Why is that? Well, it's a very broad question. I would not give the answer. I would merely point you to the direction that when one follows the way of God, a discipline, a path, a way of life, these issues seem to get resolved. Some 100% and some only 85%. But clearly there is a method to deal with these issues. So certainly, let's go back to our traditions, go back to our rituals, go back to our customs, go back to the Torah. But that's not where I'm going today. I'd like to focus on one particular emotion, which perhaps is the most powerful of all human emotions, and I believe it to be the first emotion that actually a human being experiences, and that is the emotion of love. From the moment of conception, which in itself is an expression of love between two people, the baby is being nurtured by a caretaker who is in love. This caretaker, most often the biological mother, sublimates her life for the life of another. If that's not love, I don't know what is. So the first emotion that a human being is exposed to is love. Formed in love, nurtured in love, created in love, and sustained in love. Where do we have difficulty in life later, when all of us have this incubation period of love? One possible solution is we've forgotten what the word love actually means. It has been said and pointed out by wise people that love is more of a verb than a noun. So if a person is in love with his family, but does nothing for them, we have an obvious problem. Now it's funny because I use the word family. Let me bring it down in a certain way to the average person. There are many people that consider their pets to be part of a family. In fact, some of them are closer to their pets than to their workers, or God forbid, even spouse. So I want to ask you, a person who loves his dog, who does not feed the dog, who does not exercise the dog, who locks up the dog and runs away, clearly that's called animal abuse, and there's no, so, but I love my dog. If you love your dog, you have to do something to take care of your dog. And then the more you love your dog, whether or not the word love is appropriate is not the issue. The point of the word love means that you have to demonstrate this emotion that you profess. And not demonstrating it is actually the opposite of love. You are abusing, you are hating, you are torturing this poor creature. When we love, we are doing something. When people want to be in love, what they're actually asking for is to be catered to and asking, what can I do for others? They're not asking for a title. There's no school you go to where you graduate with a certificate, you are in love. But let's go back a little bit in time. Were you ever in love? Many of us could remember such a time. And then we ask this person years later, are you in love? And the person looks at you blankly. Who has time for love? I'm working, I'm busy, I'm stressed. Even if they're fortunate enough to be married, I was once in love with her. We just We're just too involved in life to be in love. Does that make any sense to you? See, when they're looking at the word, are you in love? They're looking at a type of a noun. Do I have this quality? Rather than asking themselves, what do people in love do? The answer is they're concerned about one another. So now ask yourself the question, is there a significant other in your life that you're very concerned about? Oh yes, my father, my mother, my neighbor, my brother, my sister, my first cousin, my wife, my grandchild, very concerned. Are you gratified when they're successful? Oh yes, their success is mine. When they're sad, do you feel it? Oh yeah, it bothers me terribly that my first cousin or my son or daughter came home depressed. They're sad. It's killing me. They don't want to talk about it. So what kind of question is it, are you in love? Of course they are in love. Because love basically means going beyond yourself. Many people would say, I'm in love with myself. Again, whether or not it's appropriate to use such language, I do not know. But isn't it quite remarkable that people who are in love with themselves, others find very difficult to love? They're often labeled egotistical, narcissistic, selfish, only thinking about themselves. Let's stop for a moment and talk about the power of love. I mentioned before an infant being born, conceived, nurtured in love. I see this, I'm a father. I've seen it so many times, I take it for granted, but I never cease to be amazed. One of the kids falls down and hurts. Sometimes they bleed, sometimes they get a bruise. They run to mommy, who hugs and says, shh, shh, mommy loves you. And somehow mommy loves you solves maybe 80 or more % of the pain. And I've never understood what that means. How can someone's love heal you? And then I realized as growing up that there's nothing more healing and empowering than love. So when you're going out to your job interview and your spouse gives you a hug and says, don't forget I love you. And you walk out taller, more confident, and you can face the world. And God forbid, if you have to go to the doctor and you're frightened and your spouse takes your hand in her hand or her hand in your hand, and you just hold hands. You just say, I'm with you, I love you. And then suddenly you could face. I could go on and on. I don't want to be melodramatic. You could think about it yourself. When people love you, it's not only they make you feel confident, love actually can heal a person's psyche. They say about a teacher who was a remarkable teacher, and they once asked him, what does he do before the school year starts? He says, well, I talked to last year's teacher, and I asked him to give me a quick rundown on his students. Very often, last year's teacher tells me the better students, the ordinary students, and the troublemakers. It lets me know who I should be looking out for. What do? When the school year begins, the troublemakers I single out for special love. In fact, I love them more than I love the other students. Not because they make my life easier, but because they need a double dosage. If last year's teacher saw them as troublemakers, that means he retreated from them. So now they need not only my closeness, but I have to make up for last year's gap. And he was very successful. What do you do with a broken child? Love him more. What do you do with a troublemaker? Love him. I didn't say don't discipline. That's another avenue and an expression of love. But love is crucial. Discipline without love is ineffective. Discipline with love is very effective. Let's be a bit poetic. Love is something that transcends time and place. If I want to gratify myself, I need the here and the now. Delayed gratification is some of the hardest things for people to master. But to love my father, my mother, my brother, my sister, my wife, my cousin, my best friend, my neighbor, they don't have to be in front of me. As a matter of fact, they don't even have to be alive. Love is so powerful that it transcends time. It transcends space. Love creates love. If I eat, you're not satisfied. If I read an intelligent book or I create a symphony, you don't become any more musically inclined. But if I love you, chances are you will respond. If you love me, chances are, very good chances, I will respond. And yet there's no transfer. Are you in love? Think about it. Well, I have no family. I'm not married. I don't have any friends. Can you still be in love? You could love God. You say, how can you love God? God's not a person. True. But if the definition of love as a verb is doing things, when you pray, when you're honest in business, when you give charity, when you go to the synagogue, who are you doing that for? And why are you doing that? You're doing it for God. You're doing it because of God. You're doing it to please God. You're doing it to surrender yourself for a higher authority. If a person is devoted to a spouse for years and years, no one doubts the commitment. No one doubts their love. It's a deep love. Well, if you just thought for a moment, a Jewish person who puts on tefillin for 80 years, a Jewish person who goes to Yom Kippur for 80 years, a Jewish person who respects his parents for as long as they're alive, a Jewish person that identifies with the will of God, is that not love? What do you mean you have no one to love? I've never experienced love. Oh, I have so much love and I don't know what to do with it. First and foremost, you could do something for God. That will automatically open up to you opportunities to be love man. Because what does God love? When one person helps another person, when one person shows compassion to another person, when one person actually helps another person. You see, loving God is an end in itself, and loving God initiates a reciprocal relationship. You feel loved. So it doesn't make a difference that I lost my job, and it doesn't make a difference that I had an abusive father. God loves me, and he does not love junk. If he loves me, that means he empowers me. I feel confident, and I'm healed by that knowledge. And now I express my love for God as a verb. What can I do for God? Friends, love is something we need desperately in our lives. Love is something we must express in our lives. We have it. We're born with it. And we do it well. We just have to focus a little bit more. May it be God's will that we should feel the love between man and man, between man and God, between God and man, and that will bring a healing to the entire universe. May it be speedily nowadays. Amen.